Hey guys, Ryan Brown here, Warrior New Balance Pro. Today I'm going to go over how I string my Warrior Burn 2. So, the first thing I do is my top string. What I like to do for my top string is there's a 9 diamond row and a 10 diamond row. I prefer to use a 9 diamond top string just because I feel like it kind of pulls the mesh tighter to the head. So, the first thing I'm going to do is tie the first diamond down to the side of the head here. So I'm going to go with the nylon through the outside of the second diamond on the sidewall. From there, I'm going to go through the top of the second diamond, and then again, pulling it tight. So it should kind of look like that and be like a little bit of a cross, and then I'm going to pull it nice and tight to keep that thing as tight to the top of the head as possible. From there, I'm coming around through the second diamond again, then back through the head, then through the bottom of the mesh. Now when I do this, I'm going to do the same thing and come around the inside there and pull it tight. I'm going to skip this next mesh hole and then go to the fourth diamond. Again, going through the top of the head, back down through the mesh hole, around. Again, I'm coming through the mesh, through the head, down through the diamond, pulling it tight, locking that thing nice and tight. Big thing here is trying to pull these as tight as possible so you don't have any gaps in between the mesh and the top of the head. You want that thing as tight as possible up there. Again, I'm going to skip this next diamond, go to the following one, same pattern, going through the top of the mesh, through the head, back down and around. The whole time I'm doing this, I'm always kind of keeping this mesh flush over here. That way it kind of comes out even. It makes it easier to string. From there, going through the mesh, around, back through the top of the head, and then down to the top of that diamond, and then again, locking it in, pulling it nice and tight. Now with the last one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going through the second hole in the head here. Going through the mesh, the top of the mesh, through the head, or through the sidewall hole, second sidewall hole, back around through the mesh, and then back through that second hole in the sidewall, pulling that thing nice and tight. So when I'm done, it's nice and even on both sides, then I tie a knot in the side. So when it's done, kind of give it a nice little pull, make sure everything's nice and tight, and that's my top string. All right, rolling right into the sidewall. So we're going to go down to the next hole on the sidewall here. We're going through, we're going to do the same thing we did with the top string. We're going to go underneath, through the mesh hole, pull that nice and tight, around back through the sidewall hole, and then back underneath the mesh. What that does is now when I pull it tight, so after that, I like to skip two holes, and then I tie a nice little knot here on this next mesh hole. So what I do is I go through the outside of this next, after I've skipped 2 sidewall holes, boom, pull that down tight. Then I go through the bottom of the mesh hole. Then around again. So the big thing here is when we're stringing sticks, you're going to notice that there's always these little loops that we're going to go through. So again, we see how there's a nice little hole. So once I go through the bottom, I'm coming around the outside and putting that right through the hole. So then once I pull it down, I pull everything tight. You can kind of see how it's going to create a nice little knot here. So when I pull it tight, it locks that mesh hole nice and tight to the sidewall. So you can see how now, if you look at the side, how this mesh is going to start to get pulled down. What that does is it's going to start to create a channel for us. So then after that, I'm going to skip 1 hole this time and do the same knot, going through the outside of the head, to the bottom of the mesh, back through that little hole, little loop we talked about earlier. Boom, making sure everything's nice and tight. The big thing with your sidewalls, and really anytime you're stringing a stick, is making sure everything is nice and tight, right? You don't want to have gaps in your stick where you can fit fingers through them, right? So if you look at this, everything's nice and tied down, nice and tight to the head. One, that's going to help you not let your stick bag out, and 2, it's going to help you create that channel. Again, going through the outside of the head, we're going to do this one more time. Skipping a hole, coming through. This will be our last tie down, or knot per se, that we're gonna do. And then locking it down, right? So the big key to when you're stringing is kind of to create that channel is really, you want to pull down the first 3 diamonds, and then, you can start to double up and do some different things to create the pocket. And where you want that pocket to be based on is depending where you're going to double up and tie down and do different things. So there's a couple different ways, that you can pull these mesh holes down. I've always found that these tie downs work best. I think it just locks the mesh to the head a little bit better and really keeps it, nice and pulled down for a channel. So the next thing that we're going to do here is kind of a stack. It's called a stacked SI for those of you who know your stringing terms. So I'm going to go through the top of the mesh first, right? So I've been going through the sidewall and then through the mesh. Now that I'm going to start to create this pocket, I'm going to go through the mesh first and then into the sidewall. So I'm going to go through the top, pull that tight, and then go through a second one. So I'm going through 2 mesh holes before I go through the head. Then from here, I'm going to go through this next diamond, this next hole here, boom, and then I'm coming back underneath both of these. So I'm coming underneath this one, and then back underneath the second one. So we're going over, through the head, then under, and then we're going to, with all this string, pull everything through nice and tight. After that, I'm going through the bottom of this mesh hole, then again through the top, then I'm going through the side of the head, the next hole, and then this time instead of going back through both, I'm only going to go through one. So that's going to allow this pocket to shift a little bit more when I'm shooting and kind of let it go a little bit higher and not stay so much in the mid. So once I do this, what's going to happen is it's going to create this floating diamond. So as this pocket, with this floating diamond and then not being locked down, it's going to let it shift a little bit more to kind of create that high pocket feel. Again, though, I tie down that second one to keep everything tight to the head because I don't really want it to bag out. I've noticed, when I kind of go through 2 mesh holes and I don't tie all the mesh holes down to the head, that's when my stick starts to bag, and you kind of run into some issues there. So after that, I'm going through the following mesh hole, and I'm going to skip a hole this time. So instead of I've been going every other one now. Now I'm going to skip one, go through that next sidewall hole, then back underneath the mesh. So the key here again is when I come through, it's going to be nice. Pull this through here, right? I'm going to be nice and tied down again to the head. So this mesh hole is tied down. It's not going everywhere. Locking it in. After that, I'm going to do the same thing again at the next mesh hole. Through the head, back through the mesh hole, and then pulling it all the way through, locking it in, keeping it nice and tight. So everything's nice and tight to the head. As I string the sidewall, I always continue to kind of pull this mesh over. That way I don't tie and lock these down the outside of the rail, and I keep everything on top of the sidewall rail. So it keeps that pocket kind of more flush. Then after that, I'm going to go through this next diamond, and then just going through the top there, then through the bottom. So I've been going through the outside. Now I'm going to go through the bottom. Let's just get this thing through here. Boom, pulling it tight, and then tying a knot, and that's going to be the end of our sidewall there. So the big important thing here too is anytime you're tying knots in these heads, pull it as tight as possible, and then push that knot all the way up against the head as close as you can. That way, through time, if I tie a knot here, that string is going to slowly start to creep up, and everything's going to loosen up. I want everything to be nice and tight and locked down to the side of the head. So that's how I string my sidewalls. So now I've done this sidewall. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side, and that'll kind of create my pocket for me. So this is what the finished product looks like with both sidewalls done. What the kind of pocket that I like to string and that we just showed you is more of a mid to high pocket, right? It doesn't shift a lot and go up and down. It's really, with tying all the mesh down the head, you're really going to get a defined pocket here. The reason I string it like this is obviously it creates a lot. It helps me with shot power and really getting miles per hour in my shot as well as being accurate, right? With a mesh pocket that's going to shift a lot, right? That means the ball is going to be moving in your pocket a ton. If it's just kind of located in one spot, it's going to be more of a little bit of consistent release, right? I don't really carry the ball a ton. I'm really play more off the ball, and whether it's just catching and shooting or catching the ball, hitching and quickly getting it out of my stick, it works well for me. I'm not really cradling a ton one-handed, soaking checks, looking to feed and so on. So I don't need that ball to shift a ton in my pocket. And then I just keep the two high shooters here for that ball to sit under and come off of. Whether you're a warp guy or an unstrung mesh guy, either one of these are going to be a great option for you.